Hi and welcome back, and we're going to be looking at the history of Bordeaux. What is it that makes Bordeaux what it is today? What is it that makes Bordeaux Bordeaux? And is the beginning of the wine history of Bordeaux, the heritage of Bordeaux, is pretty much like the rest of France, like the rest of Europe, a heritage of the Roman time. So 2,000 odd years ago, the Roman Empire really grew, went and planted vines throughout their empire, and Bordeaux, Burdigala as they used to call it, was one of those regions. So nothing really special there. Roman times, pretty much like the rest of Europe, definitely like the rest of France, like England, Germany. The Romans brought vineyards and developed viticulture throughout Europe. But where things take a bit of a change is in the 12th century, when Henry Plantagenet, King of England, marries Eleanor d'Aquitaine, Eleanor of Aquitaine, as you would say in English, marry, and the county, the region of Aquitaine in France, which is the region that Bordeaux is part of, and trade deals are started between England and the region of Aquitaine. And of course, Bordeaux is a very important part of that. Now, the kinds of wines that they were drinking back in the days, that Bordeaux was producing back in the days, are very different to what they are now. Bordeaux used to be a deep color rosé. Today, the typical Bordeaux rosé, the clairé, is a very dark rosé, and that's the type of wines that would have been drunk in England back in the days. But of course, things have changed greatly since then, but it's important. It has a huge impact on what Bordeaux becomes later. This 12th century wedding between Henry Plantagenet and Eleanor of Aquitaine has a huge influence on the region of Bordeaux and will continue to have a huge influence in the years to come. Now, the English continued their influence on the Bordeaux region, firstly by inventing the glass bottle. It was in England in 1634 that the first strong glass bottles were produced, thanks to charcoal furnaces. Now, this then had an influence because until then, the trade was very much done in barrels, and we moved to the metric system in the late 1700s. And then in the 1800s, the English, who were the principal consumers of Bordeaux wines, made a change from the liter, from the barrel, to the 75 cl bottle. So it's basically the English and their trade with Bordeaux that changed the whole of the wine world for us to have now the heritage of the 75 cl bottle, which came in around the 1850s, 1860s. Now, at the beginning of the 1800s, we see another change. Actually, it started in the 18th century, so 1700s, but it grew and grew. Bordeaux wines became more and more going from that dark rosé, which we spoke about in the 12th century, towards real red wines. And in 1855, another very important date for the wine region that is Bordeaux, there was the 1855 classification of Grand Crus. The idea was to find out which were the best wines of Bordeaux. And back then, it wasn't really classified only on quality. It was classified on price. And that classification, the 1855 classification, where it was decided that certain wines were going to be Premier Grand Cru classé, Deuxième Grand Cru classé, Troisième. So what you may have heard of first growth, second growth, third growth Bordeaux. That classification was done in 1855. Very important date, because that classification still stands today. The 1855 classification of what were the best wines in 1855 still stands today, and pretty much guides the trade of the very best Bordeaux today. Are a heritage of that 1855 classification, where they decided that this wine was going to be a premier Grand Cru classé. This wine was going to be a deuxième Grand Cru classé, and this was for the Médoc. Okay, 1855, very, very important date for the Bordeaux region. Then, like the rest of France, late 1800s, disaster strikes. Phylloxera. Now, if you don't know what phylloxera is, it's a disease that's basically killed, practically devastated all of French vineyards. Everything disappeared. Winemaking collapsed until they found a way to counter that disease using rootstock. So basically taking a vine rootstock and grafting a grape variety onto it. And it was American vineyards, American vines, American rootstock that saved the French viticultural world in the late 1800s. By that time, a lot of Bordeaux was devastated, and they were really practically starting again from scratch. It saw the disappearance of a few grape varieties that didn't adapt well to this new rootstock, and it also saw the growing presence of other grape varieties, which we're going to see in one of the next videos when we look at the different regions of Bordeaux. So it is another very important date in this Bordeaux history. Now, throughout the 20th century, the French government put in place a system to protect wine producing areas and regions and appellations. The appellation system came in the 20th century. The INAO, the governing body in charge of the Institut National des Appellations d'Origine, protected a lot of the sub-regions in Bordeaux, and this had its importance because Bordeaux suddenly was protected and was becoming a brand. 60s and 70s were very tough times for Bordeaux. The consumption of wine in France was declining very rapidly. We were drinking, I say we because I don't know if you're aware, but I am French. We were drinking 120 liters per inhabitant per year on average in France after the war, and that was rapidly declining. And it was maybe the early 80s when a very famous American wine critic had a lot of influence on Bordeaux. Robert Parker, I believe he is one of the most important people in the Bordeaux wine trade, because with his marking system and his marking of certain Bordeaux, the great reviews there were of certain Bordeaux suddenly opened up another market, because there was the English market, which was the traditional market for Bordeaux wines. It opened up the American market for Bordeaux wines. It opened up the international market because Robert Parker went on to become the most important and most influential wine critic in the world. And his love of Bordeaux truly boosted this appellation. It started off with the 1982 vintage, but then, Bordeaux had some great vintages in the 80s, some truly fantastic vintages, which helped grow this brand, the Bordeaux name, the different appellations of Bordeaux, both in the US, but also internationally. Today, the Bordeaux region, as I said, represents over 50 different appellations. It represents a total production that is greater than the whole of Australia. So it's a very important wine region within the world. And it's probably the most prestigious wine region in the world, thanks to all the trading that's done, all the investment that is done on certain Bordeaux chateaux. So you have the first growth and second growths. You may have heard of en primeur. We're going to talk about it later down the line. The en primeur market, these wines have reached cult status. The first growth, second growth, premier grand cru classé, deuxième grand cru classé, have reached cult status, and they're being traded just like you would trade on other investments. They've become investment products, and they're being guided. Their prices are being guided by the global luxury product market, if you wish. Then, because we always hear of Bordeaux prices are going up. The reality is they're not all going up. It really is this elite of cru classé, the first growth, the second growth, obviously all the way down to fifth growth. Those prices are increasing, but then Bordeaux, I did tell you, is 58 different appellations, over 50 appellations, 68 million cases. So we're talking more than Australia. All the other wines aren't going up in price at the same time. And it's important for you to discover them because there are some absolutely amazing wines, amazing value for money wines within the Bordeaux region. And we're going to be talking more about that towards the end of the course when we look at the Bordeaux wine market. I hope you've enjoyed discovering this history, this look back into the heritage of Bordeaux. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the geography, the influences on a Bordeaux wine. What is it that influences Bordeaux wine? We're going to look at the climate, we're going to look at the geography, and we're going to look at a few other influences on this Bordeaux region.